I think one of the fastest ways to ruin a relationship, whether it's a friendship, a relationship, or even family, is by keeping score. And by keeping score, I mean, I text more, I reach out more, I spend more money on them, I spend more time on them, I check in on them more, I always drive, I always pay. I paid last time, or I drove last time. And when you start keeping score, it leads to an imbalance because most relationships in your life are going to have an imbalance in the specific thing that you're thinking of, right? Like I may drive more, but my friend may pay more for drinks more. She may offer to pay for drinks more. There's always trade-offs. And if you start keeping score, and the moment you start counting, you're already changing the relationship. Every relationship in your life has a invisible scoreboard, whether we admit it or not, right? Every time somebody calls, you note who calls who first. Or every time you make an effort or celebrate their birthday and they're not there for yours, it's noted in your brain. Like, when was the last time you got so angry at somebody and you realized it wasn't like the little thing, it was like the countless things that you had done before? And I'm not saying that this is wrong, right? I personally have cut off friends for a period of time. Actually, most recently, I cut off 2 friends when they didn't go on my birthday trip with me. And look, it wasn't about the birthday trip. It was about the fact that time and time and time again, when I looked at our friendship, and I was looking back after I was frustrated after a couple times they canceled on me, when I was looking back at the friendship, I realized I was always the one reaching out. I was always the one that was there for them, and they weren't there for me. And it ruined the friendship, not because I was keeping score, but because the score was uneven when I did look at the score. And I think there's a balance between keeping score, right? Keeping a tally mark or a scoreboard, and understanding who's adding value to your life and who's just taking advantage of you. And I'm terrible about raising my hand and being very giving and doing this and then later realizing that the scoreboard is very uneven. And that's what happened with a couple of my friends. And it got to the point where I had to call them out and be like, look, I'm tired of doing this, and this. And so I don't want you in my life at this point in time until you're able to show up for me. And now we're friends again and they show up for me. But it took me calling it out because the friendship needed to change. While that is being said, relationships are not transactional. And I've been learning that I look at them that way sometimes because of how much I put into it. So rather than looking at it as I vent to you for an hour, so now you get to vent to me for an hour, or you vented to me for 2 hours, now I should be able to vent. It shouldn't be that way. You know, relationships are about generosity. And if you were getting to the point where you start counting, there's clearly an overinvestment on your side, and it doesn't mean that you should be counting. It just means that maybe you care a little bit more than they do, and so you might need to take a step back. That being said, it is not a transactional relationship, and you should not be counting, oh, I paid this time, so you paid this time, or I liked your Instagram post and you didn't like mine. That becomes so unhealthy and so exhausting. I am terrible about this, though, and not in the aspect that I realize it immediately, but when it starts to weigh on me that I'm being too generous, I usually let it build up to the point that it wasn't about this first time, it was about the last 15 times, and that's why I'm upset. And it's really difficult to kind of just take a step back and not let that bother you when you are somebody that is very generous. And I'm terrible about not keeping score throughout, but when I feel like a score needs to happen, I backtrack, right? I'm like, well, every time I talk to you, it's about what you're doing. You never ask how I am. And that shouldn't be how it is. And that's something that, like, realistically I've tried to work on. But at the same time, like, it's also helped me evaluate the people that are in my life and why they're in my life, how long they should be in my life, etc. Look, and nothing's 50-50 all the time, right? There's this saying that, like, when you're at 75%, your partner can be at 25%. When you're at 75%, your partner needs to be at 125%. When you're at 100%, they can be at 100%, but you kind of balance each other. And I think, to be honest, that's partially correct, partially bullshit. Everybody goes through seasons in life where one person has to show up more than the other. And sometimes it can be exhausting, and a lot of the times that's why friendships fall out, people break up, families fight, and it's difficult because it's not always going to be 50-50. Sometimes it's going to be 75-25, and sometimes it's going to be 10-90. And as you go through these seasons, you have to understand what season you're in and ask yourself, do I rely on this person to be there when I'm in my down season? And, you know, sometimes you need more from your parents. Sometimes your partner needs more from you. Sometimes your friend is going through something and you're not, and you're going to have to be there, and vice versa. And so no relationships are 50-50, but they also shouldn't always be uneven, right? If my friend, let's put it this way. My friend a couple years ago went through a terrible breakup, and I let her move in with me. I let her stay with me. I was there for her because that was the season of life she was in, and she needed somebody. Now, when I recently ended things with somebody and was going through it, or as I've been trying to, like, search for a job, she's there for me. She lets me vent. She lets me talk to her about it. Even though I'm calling her, our conversations are for a period of time, we're surrounded around me. And it's not that she's looking at it and being like, damn, I want to talk about me. She understands and acknowledges that there was a period of time where I was there for her, right? So as you go through life, you go through seasons. And if you look at every relationship as a tit for tat, or a tally mark, or an invisible scoreboard, the score is uneven at times. It's actually uneven almost all of the time, and you catch up at different seasons in your life. But not keeping score also does not mean that you should keep one-sided relationships in your life. One thing I really struggle with is I am not good at cutting people off. Like, I will always forgive. I will always give people a million different chances. And one thing my therapist recently was like, you need to cut this person off because you're bad at cutting people off. And what is this relationship benefiting you? Like, he literally was like, when you describe this friend, like, what value is this friend adding to your life? And I paused because I could not answer. And that does not mean that this person is a bad person. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't have been in my life. It just means that at the time they weren't adding any value. So I had to cut that relationship off, and that's okay. And it was a new relationship, and at that point, looking back at the entire friendship, I could not identify any value that person added in my life. So all of this, let's not keep score, there's different seasons of life, yada yada, does not excuse you taking care of somebody or somebody else taking care of you throughout the entire relationship. Because if a relationship is one-sided, that's unfair, and it's honestly, you're being used or you're using somebody. And I think that's where a lot of the times, like, if you are keeping score, it makes sense to ask yourself why. Why am I feeling the need to keep score on this? Do I not trust this person? Is this person not adding enough value that I'm seeing it? Am I going through something that's blurring my vision and how I evaluate people in my life? Sometimes it's not even about the relationship at all. Sometimes it's about us, right? Sometimes I need reassurance. When I'm talking to a guy, sometimes I go through these waves where I start keeping score on things, and it's not because I think the relationship's uneven. It's because I'm feeling insecure and I just like need that reassurance. Like I need to feel wanted. I need to feel appreciated. And it leads to this like overcompensating of like trying to do more for them, or trying to talk to them more, get more out of them, or ask them tough questions. And it all comes from, I'm keeping this invisible scoreboard right now because I feel like I need a reassurance. And so a lot of the times, if you're keeping score, we might want to take a step back and understand why we're keeping score, because when you start keeping score, and if that person knows you're keeping score specifically, it can create a very, very challenging dynamic. And a lot of the times taints the relationship, whether it's a friendship, a romantic relationship, or even family. Once that person knows that you're feeling like they're not doing enough, and you are feeling like they're not doing enough, and vice versa, it can ruin the relationship completely. Love and relationships and connections are not measured one action at a time. A marriage is not ended after one fight. It is not defined by one fight. Imagine, like, literally imagine building a friendship with somebody off of one bad week. Like, you meet somebody and it's just like you're paying for everything. They're acting crazy. They're drinking, yelling at you, arguing with, like, imagine if that's what you built your friendship off of. That probably would not last very long at all. And healthy relationships are measured over months and years, not like by one random Tuesday. I most clearly define this by my best friend Anale. There have been plenty of times where we don't talk for a couple months. There have been plenty of arguments that we've gotten into that are pretty like crazy. There have been times where I felt like I was there for her more than she was there for me, and I'm sure vice versa. There have been times where she was there for me, or I was overly talking about myself and she didn't feel like I wanted to hear from her. There was a time just a couple years ago that my friend Anale, I went out to visit her. I flew out and I was staying with her, and she was arguing with this guy. This was before she's very happily married now, but she was arguing with this guy and like working for half of the time I was out there, and I got so mad at her. I was like, you've been on your phone this entire time while I've been out here. And she was like, what are you talking about? Like, Ashley, I don't feel that. And I was like, whatever. And now there's times when she comes out here to visit me and I'm like working, because she'll come out here on like a Thursday and I have to work Thursday, Friday. And so anyways, moral of the story, there's the way that your relationships in life are measured is not off of a couple days or a couple fights or keeping score and whatever you're keeping score of. It's measured over years. It's measured over a lifetime. Me and my best friend Anale, we've been best friends since we were 13 years old. I'm 26. That's half of our lives. And that was from us not keeping score. I've never wondered, oh my gosh, I paid for this and Anale didn't. I'm sure she's never wondered that about me either. It really just comes down to, we both go through different seasons in our lives and we have to be there for each other in different capacities during that time. The healthiest relationships aren't built off of two people that are trying to split things evenly. They are built off of two people that want to give more than they take. And that can be anything from you genuinely wanting to help your brother move, or genuinely wanting to get your mom a nice Christmas gift, or genuinely wanting to pay for dinner and not expecting anything in return. Because genuine people that are giving and want to share things then attract people that want to do the same. They also attract people that can use you. So you have to pay attention, like, long term, what is going on. And if there's a reoccurring pattern, that doesn't mean ignore it. But if you have a friend that's trying, or in a season of their life where they can't give as much as you, or they're in a season in life where they're giving a lot more, pay attention to that. Because when you have somebody that genuinely cares about you and genuinely wants to see you win and isn't keeping score on your bad days. I mean, imagine if you had a friend that was counting the amount of times that you cried in a year, and if you cried more than half the time, they didn't want to be friends with you because they would quantify you as depressed. And when I say cry more than half the time, I mean, if you like counted up the amount of days that you cried, and it was like, I don't know, 20% of the days out of a year, they were like, yeah, you're just a sad person. They didn't want to hang out with you. That would suck, right? So, like, why would I count when one person's having a couple bad days, especially when a friendship is being measured off of a short period of time, right? Let's say there's a month's time where I feel like I'm giving more than my friend. That's okay. Everybody goes through seasons in life where they're giving more, and everybody goes through seasons in life where they're giving less. I think relationships begin to be unhealthy when every moment or every act of kindness feels like a deposit that you're hoping to get back, or maybe an investment, right? You're hoping to get it back double. Some of the best people in my life have never made me feel like I owed them for loving them. And the people that I love the most in life, I hope I've never made them feel like they owe me for loving them. And I hope I'm that kind of person for the people that I love too.